of blood is critical, and they're finding better statistics that people in situations they've had for successes in late age cardiac arrest. Starts all the way from the layperson to really, and if they do a good job, you're stepping in as a trained person, just finishing it off. Just push. Hard and fast. Yeah. Push hard and fast. That's the best thing you can do. You want to try to do a heartbeat prevention. Yeah.
We want to welcome and thank all of you for attending tonight. Again, this is a workshop and no decisions will be made tonight. This is an informational workshop and the council will not be discussing the topic with the public at this time, but also feel it's important for you to be informed as to what we are discussing and proposing. And we encourage you, if you have any questions, to bring them to the town manager prior to our next council meeting, on the 16th. And again, you'll always have an opportunity to share your comments and concerns at every council meeting. At this time, I turn it over to Michelle.
So, I'm going to open in no particular order.
In no particular order.
No particular order. I have financing proposal for Katahdin Trust Company received on October 19th, 2019 at 8:58 a.m.
It's like Christmas. Yep. Did you say October 19th?
October 9th, 2019.
Option 1, 5-year term, fixed interest rate of 2.99%. Option 2, 10-year term, fixed interest rate of 3.47%. Option 3, 15-year term, 3.82%. And each payment term, we can choose either monthly, quarterly, or annual. $800.
Okay,
Yeah.
so open this one first. This is a request for proposal bank services received October 2nd, 2019 at 3:23 p.m. So now it's easy because it's the waxy one. That's the- from
Through for the man doing dance with it.
It's not identified, but I know because we dropped it off, it is from Machias Savings Bank.
No identifying.
Mr. Goff was the one that dropped it off.
Ready?
Yeah.
5-year fixed rate, 3.77%. 10-year fixed rate, 3.99%. And they are passing on a 15-year for the same amount.
Next one received by TD Bank, received 10/9/19 at 3:23.
Oh, good. Okay, so they're doing 5 and 10-year ones, passing on 15-year. So they've broken theirs down by annual, semi-annual, quarterly, and monthly. The interest rate for an annual payment is 2.4%.
Okay.
10 years, so. At 5-year is 2.1%. That's if we were to do the full payments. If we were to prepay, it changes. So a 5-year with a prepay is 2.4%. A 10-year with the prepay is 2.7%.
Okay.
And then we'll make sure these are all in your council packets. And all of the banks have been made aware that no decision was to be made tonight at the opening of the meetings, so that it gives you plenty of time to consider and discuss options.
Go ahead.
So this is a total new start. Just talking about startup costs. There's no sense. The total. And basically.
Surprise. Yeah. I was wondering why there were 3 seats.
I just downed one up the truck.
Oh.
Thank you.
Well, while we're doing the signatures, first I'm going to start off by saying, thank you for coming tonight. Before you, this is Chief Susi, who do not know from Fairfield Fire Department. Scott's here really as a supporter of the program. As you all know, Fairfield Fire Department runs a fire-based EMS service. And he can help out with any really detailed questions as he's been working and doing the service for many years that you may have that we can work out. Excuse my talking, I've been getting over a cold that Sean gave me.
Just one again?
I know I said the workshop was
Obviously, in your packets, there's a lot of information. Some of the highlights we'll start with is to discuss some of the pricing. This is really detailed as far as broken down. And instead of just giving a bulk number, it's really just kind of looking at each expense, where we're going to be at on the high side, the conservative side. Okay, because things are less expensive, and that's a benefit. And if you look at your packets, obviously there's several columns. There's the startup costs. Then there's what we would anticipate the ambulance operations cost.
Yes.
And then the last one is what our fire department current operational and reserve accounts are. Just kind of that quick.
Thank you.
And of course, these are all expenses, you know, when you obviously start the service, startup costs went from uniforms, personal protective equipment, ambulance, decision, and right down through the list. The number that you see, it's total at the bottom of that column is 181,974. And obviously the next column, if you take a look, the salary and benefits, which is a big discussion of the cost. And if you take a look at the percentages of it, that's a huge part of it, as Scott mentioned, quite a bit. It always is, as we know. Going from medical supplies, dispatching, we have other fees for medical billing, the cost to do our billing for services at an estimated. Again, this is all estimated rate, oxygen, and it just goes right down through. The total, 890,406.87 for total operating and startup costs for the first year. Total EMS operating and fire department costs, 868,490.87. And that's kind of what we look at as right now. The cost overrun is just something they did for percentage if we do up 10% for an overrun when we start. So I guess I would ask first is when we start looking into this, the specific detailed questions about.
Well, I guess to start off with, your total expense is obviously, and I was looking through this, the ambulance itself, is that a price quote in this as far as the?
Yeah. So the ambulance, there was a lot of discussions of what route to take. We have lots of options. I've quoted out several options. What you see for a price here, $46,137, is a lease option on one new ambulance with the terms of going through with the lease. So what this, obviously a lease purchase does for the town is it allows you to obviously get into a newer vehicle. It allows you lower payments for the town, for the time. And it, the $46,136 is a 5-year lease purchase. The company that we're looking at for this price is Electronics, which is a reputable company, as you all know. They deal in ambulance chassis, remounts, and purchasing ambulances, as well as maintenance of all of that as well. A very good company. That's where that price specifically comes from. We do have options that you could purchase the full new vehicle. An estimation is $215,000 for a new one. You can go less expensive and you can go even more expensive. It really depends on where you end up on what you want, how you spec it, the type of ambulances that you choose. A type 1 is what we're estimating for a lease versus a type 3. And the reasons, I guess I'll first explain about the ambulances themselves as far as the types. So a type, we'll go with a type 1. If I speak, just say,
I'll stop you.
you're wrong. So type 1 is a separate chassis that's a 4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive chassis. A standard, usually custom, not custom, but a Chevy, a GM, things of that nature. That's usually a 4-wheel drive. I can give an example. Type 3 is what you think in your mind is a standard ambulance. The front kind of van looking forward, 450 in the front with the box. All the boxes are generally the same. There's different makes, models, and hey, this does here and this does that. But the box is a box, so to speak, depending on size and what you spec out. But what you put under it is really where the types come in. Type 2 would be like a van, if you will. That one's a type 1.
Type 1.
Yeah. So type 1 kind of is a regular chassis. Some options of why a type 1, Scott probably knows, versus a type 3. Obviously when you go type 3, it's less expensive. Type 1 is the most expensive. And as far as our types, and it's because obviously the chassis that are underneath of them. The type 1 chassis that we're looking at in our area, if we're going to do one ambulance, we'd like to have a 4-wheel drive chassis. Foreseeing and looking for what we may potentially be involved with out there.
That's a type 3, you can walk through the front to the back.
Right.
A type 1, you can't, it's got a window.
Correct. And then the ambulance type 2 is narrow, okay? And you're starting to see some like newer ones, like the Mercedes out there down south. You might see some more upscale type 2 ambulances. We've settled on, on the lease, a type 1. And obviously, I've priced out all the options. Used, new, 1, 2, 1 and 3.
And that would be brand new.
Yeah, it's a 2020 Ford F-450 6.7 diesel, 4x4 with a Demers box.
That's the least one, right?
That's the least one at this price here, the 46,137.
Now, at the end of the lease, obviously you gotta buy out, or you can just roll that back into the company and jump in another new one. Correct?
Depends on the type of lease you do.
Right.
Autotronics generally does lease purchase.
So we purchase all of ours. We purchase type 3s. We don't do any 4-wheel drives just because the way we rotate ours through the fleet. We get 10 years out of an ambulance. And then we normally get 20 to 30 years out of each box, because in a type 1 or type 3, you can just remount. So your next ambulance purchase would be in the neighborhood of $100,000. And basically what you're doing is paying the labor to move the box onto the ambulance and the chassis that it's going on.
Right.
So it's about half the price down the road from what you're doing.
They're all eliminating right now.
They are.
And is it 2 or 3 remounts? 2, usually.
It really depends on your box. Our last batch that we had, they went with 3, and they were pretty worn. We were getting oxygen lines break. We were some wiring issues. I'm hoping this fleet that we have in now will be a 2 and out, which that gives us 20 years per truck, 20 years per box. So it's one of one, one of the others. The repairs were getting more expensive on the 3-time remounts than it would be because once you got to start tearing the walls out of an ambulance, trace lines and things, and you're looking at big dollars. But the remounts are really affordable, and they extend the life of your equipment. Like I said, 20 years per box.
Did you say that you guys have 4-wheel drive or don't?
We have no 4-wheel drives.
Have you ever had an incident where you needed it?
No.
I know we got a lot of side roads.
We call the highway department.
Yeah.
If we New Sweden, Stockholm, Woodland, any of those areas, when we get out into those.
But if you circle a 4-wheel drive version versus a 2-wheel drive version of exactly what you're looking at right now, probably wouldn't be $10,000 difference.
Yeah, I mean, a type 1 2-wheel drive, in my personal opinion around here, you'd probably be stuck alone.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that even type 3 studded tires, if you do have on-spot chains, if you don't have on-spot chains, studded tires are going to greatly increase your traction. And in hopes that you're not in a situation that the roads are not unplowed, which our public works department does a really good job in it. Most storms, unless, we had that crazy one last year, everybody had troubles, delays.
Yeah.
So, there's always that. And in our area, that's always stuff we have to deal with. So is a 4-wheel drive, good? Yes. When you look at expenses, obviously you can compare both. Like the starting price of a type 3, $168,000, so it's considerably less. I did not price out leases or anything like that on those. That's a purchase price right now. Used, obviously, you can start going. But you do run into a lot of maintenance expenses on your used vehicles, which is what would happen. With only 1 ambulance versus 4,
5.
so there may be a little bit an argument there for either side.
How many miles, let's say, would you put on an ambulance in service over in Caribou? Let's say per year, an average.
We do 174,000 miles a year on our fleet, and we rotate through. So when we get a new ambulance, that's frontline emergency. That stays pretty much local. I mean, for our emergency, I mean, local, all the towns we cover, but that's our first out emergency. And as they get older, we rotate them through, and those are the long distance trucks,
Right.
back and forth up and down the interstate. We normally swap them out. I normally start doing all the research on remounts at about 160, 170,000, which has changed. When I first got hired, we were running trucks 230, 250,000 miles, and it was no problem. They don't make equipment today like they made equipment years ago. They just don't, and we have a very aggressive maintenance program. I mean, everything you can do to make them last longer, but equipment today it's not built like it used to be.
But if you look at the difference between your two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive, you circle, a decision. If I may, Sean?
Yes, sir.
Excuse me. You, of course, worked in emergency services of, how many years with the town of Fort Fairfield? And I'm sure you've been in the situations of running a two-wheel drive cruiser versus a four-wheel drive cruiser. What's your opinion?
My personal opinion, I like the all-wheel drive SUVs that we have.
So in many conditions, to get to where you need to be, there's a lot of different times that you wouldn't have been able to.
I can tell you the Ford SUV gets around a lot better than the Crown Vic did.
Yes.
It really depends on what you're doing. Okay, so for example, long distance transfers, which in Caribou's case and Prescott's case,
Is that 174,000 miles include those long distance transfers?
long distance transfers will obviously, if you're using a type 1, the fuel is way up there. Okay, local long distance transfers. Local, you're going to have less fuel costs and less mileage because you're local. Okay, you are using an actual commercial chassis now as well.
On one of them,
Yeah.
we're experimenting with that right now. We put a Freightliner under one of our long distance trucks.
A medium
Just
duty.
to see what would happen because the whole thing's wearing out
Right.
piece. We've got 100,000 miles on it, and I put a set of tires on it. That's it. I've done nothing else to that truck. The other ones, 50,000, you have to redo the front ends just because the weight issues with them. This one has had zero maintenance issues, and we've hit a couch with it in the middle of the road. We've hit two 2x12s with it at separate times, and we've hit a 2x10 with it, and nothing has taken it out of service. And
That's
nothing.
the truck.
Yeah, it gets the same fuel mileage as the other one, so we're not out any. It's just made to crawl down the road. I mean,
Chief, who does the repairs and the maintenance and the?
we do all of our maintenance in-house. We have a bay downstairs, so we do all of our oil changes. We do tire swaps. So with every truck, I get a set of rims, and we have studded tires on one set, so we're able to do that in-house to save us. We can get 2 years out of a set of studded rims, 2 years out of a set of road tires, and that saves us. I don't know, put diesel in it and turn the key.
Yeah, that's
Their issues resolved in that, I mean.
The 6
Ford's
point-
had a bad history here.
the 6.0.
They did.
The 6.0 diesel was a huge issue, and I
Oh.
stayed away
Oh,
from
the
all
what I-
6.0s.
That's why I got away from Ford, 'cause I had one of those.
So our fleet now is all GM diesels because we can't fit a F-250 or 350 chassis in our firehouse. We don't have the room to put that many ambulances. If we could, I'd have no problem going back to the new Ford 6.7s. It's been a pretty bulletproof truck. If you go with like a GM model, you're going to end up in a gas, which you change your fuel mileage from 10 miles to the gallon to 3 to 4 miles to the gallon.
Yeah, you got a Duramax in those, yeah.
Not anymore. Nope. They stopped doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking right now at our our piece, because that's a big one for us. Now, do I keep that local? I'm still weighing out those options. Just do a gas job local and keep it for 10 years in town.
See, they got that new transmission, too, they're starting 19, 10 speed, and that 6.7. And then the medium duty, the heavy duty, they're advertising as high as 11 to 12 miles per gallon at 35,000 pound capacity. That's, with that new 10 speed, you're jumping another 2-3 miles per gallon with that.
And you're putting, forewarning, you're putting a lot of weight on the chassis.
Yeah.
That box, when you do the box, the equipment, the personnel, you're putting a lot of stress on that chassis. That's the experiment with the Freightliner right now.
I had a 6.7 commercial in my shop 2 weeks ago. Had a turbo on it at 377,000.
They're back to where they used to be
Yeah.
in my,
307, of course, it's on the road in New England, delivery truck, it's steady. At 377,000, it just lost its first turbo. And Ford did a rebate for them because there was a recall that they did and they like 50% paid for it. And the guy told me up till then they were running the Doramax, which still is a great package, but when they quit making it, they went to this, and he said it's just amazing. It really is.
everyone that has it, I haven't heard any complaints on it, so I don't, you'd be doing no wrong with it.
Any more questions on the
Before we get off the ambulance, could you please check into the type 3 lease? I would just like to be able to compare the differences, because you were running a type 3, correct?
We run
Mostly.
all,
I'm just curious as to, what the cost difference is between the two, as far as the lease.
Okay.
Thank you.
Of course, there's, Holton Fire Department is now leasing all their ambulances. And they run type 3s on their lease.
Okay.
Theirs is, we can't compare numbers on Holton discussing with the chief and with Autotronics, just simply because that was kind of something new to them in Autotronics and the whole situation. So it's kind of a different scenario as far as what we would be experiencing on a lease. But we'd have to check those numbers and having it, no doubt, it's going to be cheaper.
Right, yeah, just my
Because-
thought on it is,
Yep.
all the other area departments are running mostly the type 3. Yes, a type 1 would be great, but let's check into the type 3 as well.
Mhm.
Just a thought.
Prices on new and used, just not the lease prices.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. And we've, I've looked at,
Is this not? Is that a different one?
did I miss that on that? The one out.
But that was a used.
Right, that's why that's why I didn't use it as used. I had a price on the lease for a used type 3, which they have a used $60,000 for a used one, but the lease on that's $21,100 for a 3-year lease. But it's that's 35. I can't remember. I think that was. I'm trying to remember what the mileage on.
Sorry, I have mine right here.
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
so-
definitely like the idea of the new versus used.
Yeah. I can tell you that we started out in Presque Isle with all used and one new. We initially bought 3, a type 1, and 2 type 3s. Of course, we run into the 6L problem with the 2 and had a lot of problems maintenance-wise with it and a lot of expense. We've worked through it, and the type 1 has always been our backup, the 4-wheel drive, if we need it, we use it. And now we have 3 type 3s and then 1 type 1. But that's just how they chose to do it. So, and that's kind of, again, these are numbers off of what we put together for a package. That doesn't necessarily say that these are anything this is set in stone. Did we want to go over any other questions on the startup costs? And there's a lot of things that go into an EMS service. This is just mostly looking at the expenses of the ambulance. startup costs, okay? There is, Chief Susie will probably tell you, there's expenses to employees, but when we talk about fire department and trained firefighters, there's less expense to them. Obviously, the EMS and everything that goes along with the business and the program and all the incidentals, there's a lot more to that than there is having trained firefighters. So this is what these numbers represent.
These are the costs to start out. I do believe that when Carol was out, they send the bill to the people. Okay, so I mean, and they recoup some of the expenses that goes into that, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
So I use,
I know Carol's not a profit-making type deal, but
yeah, we use, so when I look at how many calls you're gonna do,
Yeah.
I estimate, and I've changed my estimation a little bit because of the fact Maine Care just voted through legislation to mirror Medicare, which is great. They used to pay 40 cents on the dollar bill, where now they'll pay the 80 cents on the dollar bill, which is, that's a big deal for all of us trying to do this. When you put all that in, I use $400. So when you're estimating a run, and it might be more, if it's a private, you're gonna get more off that. If they don't pay, I mean, all those seem to work out. I was within $5,000 of estimating what Presque Isle was gonna make their first year, just by my little math equation. And I see about 176,000 for Fort Fairfield. Now, what you do in policies for no transports, I mean, all that'll, you'll have to work all that out.
And in your packets, you've received, did they receive this on the numbers,
This
the
one,
revenue?
they did in their original council.
Okay, so the
Not
original,
tonight.
original
So-
council packet was,
If you're looking at the payback,
yes,
then the only advantage that I see, if you had all the calls for ambulance service, there will be some calls that you could complete if you had four-wheel drive versus if you had two-wheel drive.
I think we're gonna be able to complete all calls.
Yeah.
It's just what factors are you dealing with depending on what you have. There's four-wheel drive, two-wheel drive, there's nothing saying that one versus the other means you're not gonna be able to do the call.
Well, if somebody, for instance, and
We've never not been able to make it to a call in the wintertime, one way or another. If we have to wait 5 minutes, the guys go to the house and we get a plow truck there and someone plows it out for us. Like, we've never not been able to refuse a call because it's snowing outside.
even off-road, like say in the fall, if it was out in the field or up
Sullivan Road's in our coverage area.
Yeah.
And that's when you use assets. I mean, we have ATVs, the PD has ATVs.
right.
We've used game wardens to help us before because it didn't matter if you had four or two-wheel drive, you weren't going to where the call was. So you use your assets along with it.
Each call will require something maybe different and you have to, a good driver hopefully won't bury the vehicle in a driveway or in a road where they know they're gonna get stuck, hopefully. Scott can tell you and I can tell you that there's plenty of driveways that are not plowed by the owners. I mean, the roads are plowed, but now you've got to get the patient to the ambulance. And so sometimes it's, full throttle and try to get into the driveway, and that may put you in a worse situation than if you stayed at the road. You really have to weigh each situation out separately and make those decisions as you go, depending on what you have for your resources, your vehicle, et cetera, et cetera.
And then you just make adjustments around your equipment. That's all.
But if we went with a four-wheel drive, we wouldn't have to. Not to that.
You're adding, the only downside to a four-wheel drive that I can see is besides price, is extra weight, and the extra weight
And
does
the
a
extra
couple
cost,
things,
that
right?
front end's gonna wear out quicker than a two-wheel drive.
So you've got, you have some, it's a balance between the two.
Yeah.
Right.
Most ambulance services use type 3s because of their economical part of how they operate. And they're mostly efficient and they work well. You're starting to see the trend down south, start in southern Maine. When I say down south, it's trending to type 1s. Medium duties were popular for quite a while, and that's kind of died down a little. You don't really see a lot of medium duties purchased for ambulances, though there's a lot of argument to be said about having one, especially.
And your call mix.
Yeah.
Your call mix is a big thing. So in Southern Maine, they get a lot more ER back to the nursing home, or the
Close.
nursing home to a treatment, or physical therapy, and you can get by with a van on that because really there's no treatment. You're transporting. You're kind of giving a ride.
When we did our numbers on Fort Fairfield and all the towns, but with Fort Fairfield, after speaking extensively, we did a $388 per call cost versus, and that,
Yep.
looks at that, and so the numbers that you saw on your sheets are a little less. So with all services, the billing is a big part of it. You are able to be, it's, to be perfectly honest, you'll be able to generate revenue to help offset some expenses.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to, because I remember when here we first started with ambulance services, I was on the police force. And that was one of the concerns they were talking about, was the cost, and, I know how well that's worked out over there. And that's my thing is we're talking a lot of big numbers here, but we're gonna get some of those big numbers back on with the calls and on the ambulance goes out and stuff like that.
Yes, and you saw the numbers show the anticipated revenue for our community of Fort Fairfield. I've shown 169,556 for what we know for Maine EMS calls for the last 3 years, 18, 17, and 16, and looking at what our calls are, treated transport, our no transports, and all of those numbers, and putting together the cost of what we're going to see for estimated billable calls. Okay, and that's not adding any other communities in. That's just us. Okay, and again with making revenue, this is discussing 911 emergency response calls. Caribou and Presque Isle, and Caribou does real well at it. They do a lot of long distance transfers, and that generates more revenue. However, with our service being smaller, I'm looking at focusing on our community and our 911 response more than I am looking
And
at.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's a community
Yeah.
service that is going to be here and that you're providing.
Yeah.
With one ambulance, you can't be having a banquet.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Is there room for growth? Absolutely. But, starting out, what is the focus? As you read in my memo, my focus is our fire protection here in this town with fire-based EMS service. Not only can we try to provide a better fire protection than we currently have, but also to help provide our own EMS service in our town. That's kind of the focus and where this project is coming from. With that being said, can we make some revenue hopefully with, that coming in? Yeah. And I'm never going to guarantee any of these numbers because that would be foolish, because you just don't know when you get down to the brass tacks, what's coming back, what's collected, what's not collected, what are write-offs, what are non-billables, what, those percentages. But we can look at the averages and we can make some good estimations as you've seen here in the package. And certainly this is conservative, okay? These numbers, the 388 per call is a conservative number. So if we're running a higher advanced service for that call, then you obviously can make more return on that call. Okay? So we're looking at obviously being very conservative with this number so that, I'm not promising you the world and you come up with half of it, So.
So we in 18 we made just shy of 1.5 million in revenue, but we wrote off $544,000 in bad debt. Not just bad debt, but your contractual allowance, money you have no way to recoup.
Right.
Sorry, I do this with my counsel too.
I think we we've seen this before.
Did
Yeah,
you?
Yeah, not that.
Oh.
Some of the things that Scott was talking about as he's doing this, it was changing, is some funding has changed as far as main care used to be quite a bit less than Medicare. And that was really unfair really to all the services in Maine. That's changed, that helps.
So there's 4 payers out there that well, there's a whole bunch of insurances you'll bill to, but those will fall under privates. So you bill Medicare, main care, private, and self-pay. So it's lower now, it's 58% of our payer mix of who we're hauling is Medicare. So that's a majority. There's like 20% now. When I first started the station, it used to be 2%. About 20% now is between main care and self, and then the difference is private. So our rates are based off Medicare max allowable. So they dictate how much, and you can't change your pay per provider. What you set your pay in, what you approve as a council for Vinny to charge people is what he charges all of them. And I work within that and mix and match. And if we're hauling more of one, then I'll raise that one so we can recoup, but take more of a contractual allowance. So if Medicare dictates that we can charge, for easy numbers, $100 per call, that's what they dictate we can charge for a BLS call is $100. So I haul 4 of you for that call. Well, Medicare, they give you the rate, but they only pay you 80%. So they're going to pay us $80 on that call. Main care paid us $40. Privates pay $100 because that's what we're billing. And self-pay, you hope they come in and we set up all kinds of payment plans. So we do 2,300 ambulance calls a year in Caribou, and it all depends on that payer mix and revenue. Now, this year we're way above on what I projected because I was trying to be down, but our long distance transfers and have gone up a lot. So that all changes that because that's just, I mean, you're charging by mile. Everything's broke out. You charge by mile. Medicare pays a percentage for the first 10, then they pay a percentage 11 to 50, and then 51 to whatever is another percentage. So it all goes back and forth. So whatever you dictate. So one of the things my council, charge more. I can charge $1,000 a call, but I'm only going to get paid $80. Now, those few privates that we do, yeah, you'll make more money on those. But my contractual allowance, which would be, so when Vinny comes to you and talks about contractual allowance down the road, contractual allowance is the difference in what you paid or what you got paid to what you charged. So contractually, I lose on Medicare $20. On main care, I lose $60. So that's what adds into your contractual allowances. It's the difference between what you charged and what you actually received in that. So those are all the big hits you take. So ambulance services across the state are taking massive insurance hits because one, Medicare hasn't raised their rates in 6 years. And actually they went negative 1 year and went backwards. So they're pretty flat. And that's a matter of prodding those offices, which I've got a big mouth and I've been prodding them really hard now. But main care bringing it up to mirror Medicare, that's huge. That's a 60% bump for them. That's a big deal for services out there. Self-pays, our prices are Medicare minimums. People come in and pay. We've been really fortunate on self-pays coming in and paying their bills because it's not an outlandish bill. It's, you're going to bill for $500-600 and allow them to make payments and they pay it off. If you get a bill for, Life flight for the plane to come up here, $17,000 for the plane to come in. If you get a bill for $17,000 and it's coming out of your pocket, probably, all right. Yeah, but if you get one that's $600 or $700, that's the difference. So you got to keep it somewhat affordable for your citizens, so they will come in and pay those bills.
My wife flew from Frenchville to Boston, $22,000.
Well, Frenchville, yeah, that's even further. They charge by the air mile.
Yeah.
What percentage of your 911 calls for your 2,700 calls a year? Because I'm sure your revenue for your transfers is up quite a bit.
Oh, so revenues for transfers, I just did this exercise. So we did 1,058 transporting 911 calls last year out of our numbers. So out of those 1,058 transporting 911 calls, we made 500 and some change, 560,000, somewhere's right there. We did 624 transfers and made $890,000 on the 600 transfers, 624 transfers. And then we have a ton of no transports. That was $100,000 loss just in the no transports. Going to pick somebody up off the floor or going to.
You're gonna get a little.
We do. It's part of it's part of providing that service.
And there's no, it's a little guesswork, but with the numbers we can show, according to the main EMS reports for the last several years of what those look like, or, no transports.
Yeah.
So
I'm
you can see,
looking at those.
Yeah.
You were talking BLS, but you're gonna try and strive for paramedic
yeah,
if you can.
if you can.
Well, our whole
So,
department's paramedic.
right.
Yeah.
But if I go pick you up and bring you to the hospital because you fell in your driveway and you just want to be checked out, still a BLS call
Yeah, so if I have,
It's a level of services.
the goal
that you provide.
that you provide.
So you put oxygen on everybody.
Oh, no, I understand.
Right, you know.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it also depends on your service. So if you license your service at a basic level permitted to paramedic, then all you have to have on that truck is a basic. But when you license at a basic level, it's a tiered system with Medicare. So you get paid not on the top tier, you get paid on the bottom tier. Even if you do an ALS call, your ALS call is going to come in somewhere in the middle, where if you were
Advanced.
right, so we're not even a paramedic service. We're advanced. We're EMTA. We're an advanced service permitted to paramedic, even though our entire staff is medics, because there might be that one time where you're at a car accident and you have to throw somebody else in the truck. So it's just to cover us, but it doesn't matter because once you're advanced permitted up, as long as you're in that top tier, you're still getting paid the top rates.
So financially, it makes more sense to be at an advanced license permitted to paramedic
Yeah.
than it would be BLS to paramedic. However, you really have to look at what your staff is. Unfortunately, it's something that I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be, only because I want this here to here, the advanced paramedic, but we have to look at what is coming in the door. To make that decision. Yeah,
When you started out, right?
Yep.
yeah.
You started out as, basic EMT.
Yeah. Caribou did a
It's
study
required
paramedic.
paramedic.
Yeah.
At least one.
So-
All the time. That's where the money is.
So that's really gonna depend on the situation of what we bring in for staff to help decide what license level to be at. And that can change annually. You can relicense at a different level. Excuse me. So there's been no decision really made except to know that tier structure, that if you are advanced or to paramedic, you're gonna get paid at the fullest level that you can for that call, get an advanced call or paramedic. Okay, so employee expenses, let's jump right over to that. Excuse me, so the plan is to run a service, and a fire-based EMS service would be a 56-hour work week, which is 53 and 3, which would give us 3 shifts, 24 hours, 2 full-time for EMS response, and then 1 full-time deputy chief, of course, for the chief. When we look at the salaries, there's a mix of what the wages are comparatively, these are, I've looked at Caribou's wages, I've looked at Prescott's wages, and we're a little bit higher, but it's the start. Okay, it's not that much higher, honestly. And, but Caribou already has an existing contract, and so does Prescott, and they already have a tier structure and steps. et cetera, in place. But when we look at the expenses, if you look at what the federal law mandates for exempt employees, which are firefighters, their work week is 53 hours before overtime incurs. And 3 hours has to be paid overtime on a 56-hour work week every week. If you're running that schedule, that's a no, okay? And those calculations that you see before you shows just that. To add in some of the estimations, when I estimated what are the total costs of the 6 employees, that is using the highest price of if I hired 6 firefighter paramedics at that $14.50 an hour. Now, keep in mind that when you look at the $14.50 an hour, I hope some of you are going to say, that's so low pay, how can you do that? So anybody gonna say that? Because that is $14.50 an hour, but what you
That's the trend
yeah, it is the trend, and what you may not understand,
throughout the state.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
what you may not understand is how it's calculated. Okay, so you think of a $14.50 an hour for a 40-hour work week, and you times that out and you get your gross annual. Okay, but if you look at the gross annual numbers, okay, at $14.50, that doesn't equate to the 43,000, okay, annually. The 40-hour work week. So where these numbers, why they look so reduced is because you're 53 hours at the 14, 3 hours overtime every week. Okay, so then the mix of how you pay them and where you come up with your gross annual. Now, this is the estimated, what right now the trend is we should pay them. I'm not going to sit here and tell you we should pay them $100,000 a year, but it would be nice, but that's not realistic, right? Right, okay. You know, I mean, obviously, everybody would love to have more pay, and that's an argument for another day, okay? But, you know, looking at this, I thought this was conservative. It was a little bit higher to start, not much higher. I think Caribou is like a little bit higher, like 15 something.
15, 11
And then
for a paramedic.
right, and they stay that way for 3 years. 3 years, okay. Prescott starts at 13 something, I think it's 1364 maybe, and then they have a step rate for every so many years for 6 years, and contractually then you add all that stuff in. So this is where the number came from initially on the salaries for just the employees. Any questions on that right now?
For the 6, not all 8.
Right, yeah, just for the 6. When we jump down to the 2 salaries for the deputy chief and the chief would be salary positions at those rates of pay. And there may be, the deputy chief might be an area where we might need to negotiate a little bit into that, looking at what they're paying out there right now. But that's what I think is an average fair price right now. Coming down into employee benefits, this is strictly right out of the town benefit package right now. And I gave all the options, but the totals are the most expensive options, which are main PERS. The town has a regular main employees retirement program versus a special retirement program for police and fire. So the cost is an average of 10% when you, if you went that route. If you did the 457 ICMA, you can see those expenses as well. And that calculates what you're going to cost for each employees, plus your vacation, your sick leave, 2 personal days, which matches what the town currently does now. And you drop that down and you have those totals. The next area for benefits is separating obviously the chief and deputy chief and their benefit package, those numbers, and bringing it down. And then overtime. Now, there's a lot of stuff in the overtime. So I first want to explain this a little bit. So when we go up top, there's 3 hours mandated every week overtime according to the federal schedule of how you have to pay. Okay. That's included in that top salary package. Down in the bottom overtime, there's a lot of expenses that we've planned for, and in the first year of a service, it's really conservative. It's high, and it's because we have no data to go off of. This is our trend of what we're using for overtime in a year. This is what we're seeing our employees are using for sick leave or vacation. We just don't have that data in order to make an educated decision. So what you see here for like sick leave over time is equating every single day that every employee that's hired has and the cost of overtime to fill that position. And you see that number, and that's really just planning for the worst. Not that I hope every employee would use every single sick day. But again, it's being conservative so that if we put a plan together, we're not going to fall short within the first year. Now, obviously, if the town chooses to, you have, there are other ways obviously to do that. You can, okay, we're going to estimate this, and if we go over, we're going to pull it from this fund here. So, I mean, there's obviously your choices of options in that category, but that's how I planned it out to start. And then, of course, adding in our holiday pays for, your employees, whether you're on, whether you're off, and moving into also the 8-hour employee holiday pays. When we drop all the way down, you look at the totals and what you have for total salaries for fire chief and deputy chief, your firefighter, paramedic 6 salaries, your benefits, et cetera, overtime, holiday pay, and FICA all in that. And that brings us to the total of $655,887.23, which, as you can see, is probably the largest portion of this entire budget.
And how much projected are we supposed to make a year?
Okay, so on our revenue estimated, if we're looking, and we're trying to focus tonight, you've had numbers for other communities just on Fort Fairfield. Okay, so we are estimating projecting 169,556. And that could be up or down. Conservatively, I don't think it's gonna be lower, I think it's gonna be higher, because it's a conservative
On the
number.
lower end.
Right.
But that's the projected revenue that we can see from that. And again, when we take that all the way back to our main page and we look at that, okay, when we look at our total expenses, when we add everything together and you're taking off your projected revenue from that. Now, obviously, everything looks better when you add more revenue. So if you had another community, then that revenue makes it look better because you're generating more, and another one, and so forth.
It's volume.
Yeah, so I really don't
It's
want.
purely volume.
The purpose of my focus tonight is not to say we're gonna take over the county, we're gonna do these, because that's unrealistic. And I think, for me, the goal has been and will always be to focus on the 911 service for this town. And if we can do something in the future, or we do something in other towns, then great. But I think it's important to focus solely on our community. And our region is important, as I've explained, and how we can help each other in the region. And like, if you can help out another town contractually with covering them, that's helping with the region. If you can help with another service by standing up a service here, and it helps Caribou and Presque Isle in mutual aid agreements and backing each other up in our communities and helping them do their job a little bit easier because they know they have another service that is there that we all can work together in. Obviously, those are benefits of this as well.
And we do all buy, so Presque Isle Fire consultant, I don't know what that word, asked us what we use for equipment. And myself or any of the 15 guys that work for Caribou Fire can jump in the back of a Presque Isle ambulance and work wholeheartedly with any piece of equipment they have. It all mirrors. It's a mirror truck to what we're running. It might be in a different place, but it's all the same. It's all the same stuff. Your monitor, your stretcher, all your hard lines. It's all the same equipment. That's important. We all work together. If there's a car accident, down the road on the Fort Road, we're all going to be working together. Or we're going to throw people in each other's trucks because it's not about who gets it. It's about who benefits from having the service there. That's what it's about. It's taking care of. It's awful to talk dollars and cents when you're talking about ambulance coverage, and I hate like anybody to do it, but it's the nature of the beast too today. It's you have to talk about the dollars and cents, but it's the citizens that benefit from anything that we can do as a collaboration or work together on.
And my thing is the safety of the residents, and that's my thing. The money thing is, I understand, that, we can't, yeah, we have to put some dollars on it.
Absolutely.
But when Carol started up there, their service, that was a big stickler and it,
Can't even imagine.
and it panned out anyway, and it turned to great service. And this is what I foresee for Fairfield and maybe assisting other communities and stuff. But we got Presque Isle handling quite a few communities right now in Carol does. So,
We do 9.
yeah, so we're looking at, I have no problem extending our arm out, like you said.
But you build into that. We didn't have them all overnight either. Caribou picked them up one by one. I mean, it's 344 square miles we cover now. But that all equates into that whole 2,300 calls a year. So, outside communities, I know how many we do in each community we go to. I know how much it costs me per call to go to each community, and I know the average of what we get in return for each community. I track that constantly because I've got a council, just like Vinny has one, that's asking, are we subsidizing these communities? Right now, we're being covered right now. That's, you got to watch. Like, in order for us to take care of our community, we have to watch how we're handling other communities. So,
And in the region, as you know, about the current potential changes, I say potential, but changes that are about to happen with Presque Isle and the absence of Northern Light Health that's going to happen at the end of the year. That's going to, if they keep Fort Fairfield with our call volume, that's going to really increase. It's going to be over 13 communities that they'll be covering. And it's not to say that they can't do it, because there have been plans and discussions and meetings regionally through the managers and the chiefs. But if we stand up a service here in Fort Fairfield, that's going to take that response burden off of Presque Isle. And they actually will have a similar call volume as what they were responding to Fort Fairfield by covering all of those communities.
plus it's another regional asset. And right now, regional assets are very few and far between. Jackman lost their ambulance service 2 years ago. If you were to have a heart attack in Jackman, if it's snowing out, so the helicopter can't get to you, it's 45 minutes for an ALS truck to get to you with a monitor. That's what this has. And regionally, we work really well together up here. The communities work well. It's another asset, and to gain an asset in an area like we live in is worth a lot.
When we're talking about the salaries, expenses, is there any further questions on that? There's, we put together what I believe is one of an okay package. Yes, there's negatives to it, there's positives to
Okay
it.
package, because I okayed the package.
Right.
It's not what he wanted to present, but this
Wow.
is what I felt.
I knew what the numbers were before I ever asked.
That's right.
Yeah, it's, and these are,
This is a cheap service, just your benefits and all that. I had that discussion with a paramedic 6 years ago.
yeah,
I said, if you want to make some money, go down to New Hampshire. I said, you can make 4 times the money and work 8 hours. 8 days a month.
yeah, and the difference is,
120 grand.
difference is call volume.
Yeah,
And we,
population.
But you're busy, you gotta do the calls.
Right, there's, what you say tonight, 5,000 calls from
Yeah,
this,
they're over 5 grand.
It's payer mix. So I know for a fact, not last year, it was last year, 18.
Yes.
17, we made within $200,000 of Bangor Fire, and they ran 7,800 EMS calls. It all has to do with your payer mix and your billing company.
Right.
And your billing company. You got to have pit bulls that aren't afraid to call people and aren't afraid to go after insurance companies.
We were all back.
Just about chained up. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, shake it out.
right.
Yeah. And it's insurance companies. It's not citizens. It's insurance companies. They're all holding every penny.
How many calls a year do you get?
So And in 2018, the total calls were 437. 2017 was 457, 428 for 216. And these are the last numbers that I've received from Maine EMS. We had some different numbers with Northern Light Health. These are what we're using right now. Right now, back when I did this report, which would have been, it's now October, September, August.
See,
Yeah.
two.
So it would have been, we were at 289 calls for Fort Fairfield. So it's a fair amount of calls for the municipality. It's not obviously outlandish, I think Presque Isle, or what's your average call volume again?
About 2,300.
Just EMS or fire and EMS?
No, just EMS.
Okay. And so, Presque Isle, I believe, is lower than that. It might be 1,500, I want to say.
But we've picked up, we pick them up all over. Bridgewater, we picked them up, a couple in Holton, Linneus, New Limerick, Waterville.
Coming back from transfers.
Yeah, just pick them up along the road.
And the numbers you saw in the other towns. Yeah, you need a ride?
You'd be surprised at some of the calls.
Taxi light.
Yeah.
The other towns, Limestone and Caswell, it was just stuff I added into this, projecting maybe doing a service with them. But again, my focus was our community. You see the numbers here and what they could inject in revenue of a plan. And I think that's close to 800 calls if you add them all together. But again, we get to, when you start looking at other communities, you run into the issue of what Chief Susi was saying, is that are we subsidizing these other communities? And how billing is changing in the future, how municipalities are looking at their expenses and what they're charging is changing, because it's really unrealistic for a community to ask another taxpayer community to subsidize and pay for those expenses and to absorb the bad debt from that town. It really is unfair to do that, in my opinion. So unfortunately, those are the things that are going to change in the future, is that those types of charges are going to be pushed onto those municipalities. No longer are the days, or should no longer be the days, that a corporation is writing off, millions of dollars, because this municipality and others cannot do that. Where you'll fold, and it's not appropriate. It's not.
And we've seen it.
Yeah.
7 companies in the last 2 years have done just that. They've folded.
And
So we want to
so,
make sure we set ourselves up for success.
Absolutely.
yeah, and so, entering into anything, other discussions of other towns is gonna have thoughts like that.
And it all reflects back on what Vinny said. So it all reflects back to what your primary goal is. And if you want to go to those outside communities, that's when you have to start talking and thinking about, do we need another ambulance to do that? Because when you get up to 800 calls, that's more than 2 calls a day. And whatever your peak hours are, and I can't tell you, I can't get my hands on that information. So I know what our peak hours are, and it's not unusual to have more than 1 truck out at a time. But I know how that falls. It's not going to be good for a citizen in Fort Fairfield if you're in Limestone handling a call and there's a call here in town. There'll be questions asked. Yeah, there'll be questions asked. So it's like you said, Caribou did the same thing. They grew into it. They had 2 ambulances to start, and they grew into it. They were only doing 1,000 calls, not even 1,000 calls a year.
And so there, to piggyback off that, there's also something to be said. So do you start with 1 ambulance with a spare? Do you go, so if you're choosing things like when we talk about the ambulance, and we were discussing a lease and also a maintenance package through Autotronics, if you're gonna do those types of things on a single ambulance, there's the expenses in there. They are guaranteeing or will replace an ambulance if that 1 ambulance goes down in the time that it needs to be fixed with the maintenance package.
How quickly can they get something up there?
Well, good question. They told me I can't precisely answer it, but they're right here and in Bangor. So in Caribou's, they're in Frenchville and Bangor.
Bangor.
So in Caribou's situation, or I think Holton, they do, is they actually have 5 ambulances.
I think they have 3 and 1 in
They have
Bangor.
4. They have the
Yeah.
4th ambulance sitting down with Autotronics in Bangor. So as they go down for a long distance transfer, if there's a problem and they need to get that maintenance or repair or whatever, they pick up that other ambulance and they head north. That's what they chose to do with that 4th ambulance, as they were running 3 at the time.
That's what they do now.
Yeah. Scott from Caribou Fire, Presque Isle, it's all solely purchase the vehicles, maintenance the vehicles, and things like that. And a lot of other companies do that as well. Obviously, there's many expenses. I don't know what Public Works does for Caribou, but there's many things you're not going to be able to fix. It's beyond an oil change and rotate the tires. Okay, there's many things electronically, ERGs, all kinds of stuff, and that's not going to be fixed by the firefighters. So if you do a maintenance package, there is a benefit or a value to that, or you choose to have either you shop it out. I think you use
Whited. We use a Whited. They're really good with us, actually.
Keeping in mind that we have a very skilled and talented public works department that is overworked already.
Yeah,
And that's
So
the
if we
problem
were
with
to
ours.
Rely on them
Yeah.
for that maintenance.
certainly we don't want to say they're going to do all the work, because I'll get hurt when I leave. So,
And ours is certain times of the year is better. We know that. We're coming into plow season. I know I'm not gonna get it, and it's not because they don't want to, it's just,
They don't want to know it.
they just don't have in the
They
personnel.
definitely
Everything's,
have time.
Yeah.
everything's just consolidated. But
And if
One
you
of-
can, for a minimal amount, honestly,
Yeah.
versus.
they're really good to us, and the turnover's fast. So, I mean, they get right on it, they overnight parts, they treat us very well at Whited. I have no complaints over anything they've done for us.
They have a lot of friends.
One thing I would recommend is you get a second, whether it's a used one, or I would, just of the nature of where we live, just for the nature of where we live, you slide into somebody in the wintertime. You back through a fire department door, which happened today. But
or another ambulance.
it's, you can get a used one ready to go that you don't want to base all your runs off, but you can do, under 10,000. And then if you have to swap trucks, you take everything out of one and throw it into the other one. So it would only benefit you to have that backup.
Right, with the, and that would be the cheapest expense for that would
Yep.
be to have the ambulance without the equipment. And when we say equipment, I mean the expensive pieces, the monitor, for example, is 34,000 and change brand new. To buy one, just, that's expensive right now in the startup. So having an ambulance that you can transfer your stretcher, your stair chair, your monitor to, and then everything else is on there, your disposable medical supplies, your durables, and your other thefts, which is cost effective. It's an expense, but it's not like a $20,000 stretcher and a $34,000 monitor and a $3,500 stair chair. Those expenses, as we progress in the future, you do want to do those, so you can just hop into the ambulance and go. But in the beginning, if you're going to have a spare to swap out, that's what the purpose of that would be.
But if you lease two, I'm looking at type 3, that on 21,000.
That was a used.
That
That was used,
one.
okay.
Yeah.
But, and I know this is checking on the lease on a type 3. If you had to go with 2 type 3s on the lease.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be.
Yeah, I know, I understand, but if you got a type 1, it's at 46,000, you're paying, and it's.
Yeah, if you do, like 168,000 was a quote that Autotronics gave us for 2019 E450 V10 6.8. Okay,
That's a good quote.
with a
Yeah.
diverse box. Okay, so that's what the brand new price, purchase up, get it here, plus or minus again your specs. Okay,
But if you lease it, it's all filled up, right?
that'll be. It depends on how you choose. You can choose to lease with equipment.
I asked that too.
Right. So it's really choices, right? I personally don't think it's a good idea to lease the equipment. I think you should buy it, and then it's ours. Leasing the vehicle, if that's an option, there's a little more value to that. Or
Well, I just don't know how they come stock.
We have a company that comes up, so with our monitors, company comes up every year. We don't send them out. We don't do anything. He comes up, puts them on a table. Shoots the breeze with the guys, runs the monitors, certifies them every year, and it's minimal. I want to say it's $100 a monitor, $200 a monitor. It's very minimal. We have another company that comes out and does our stretchers every year. So the 10-year life on them, I'm going to get more than 10 years out of them because they're servicing them every year. It's a cheap insurance to pay on that stretcher to have them come. And if we're all on the same schedule, they'll go to one place, and the next place, and the next place, which cuts the cost.
And that's pretty important for your monitors, your stretchers,
Yeah.
things of those expenses to have the service packages in, because it is insurance. As you know, over the years, well, you were manual for quite a while, right? Or you always manual stretchers. The power ones are hydraulic driven, battery operated, everything's battery today, right? And so, but you do run into problems, hydraulic leaks and things. And if you don't maintenance these or service them every year, then you're voiding your warranty on those stretchers.
And the guy has all the parts in his truck. That's the best part.
Yeah.
He comes up, fixes it, and he's out the door. And I mean, we haven't put any money into the services. It's very, very inexpensive for all five to get them done every year. So
So I mean, obviously, if you look at 168,000, if you took that into a lease, it would be a 5, 7, or 10. It'd be much different in prices. Or you can choose to take the total prices and just say, well, we're going to buy it. Maybe that's the option as well. It really is up to the total price of the package of how we're going to pay for them. Okay. And those numbers change a lot of.
Well, my whole thing is, we're gonna, we know we're gonna need at least 2 days. There's no doubt about it, we're gonna need at least 2.
We certainly can't buy them outright.
No, I understand that. But as far as at least 2 of the cheaper ones, take the other type 3s, as far as leasing those in the type 3s, wouldn't that be better just initially start out with? Instead of with a 4-wheel, a couple 4-wheel one, and then.
Yeah, I mean, obviously having 2 ambulances is better than 1. Again, if that's for backup only,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
we're not putting a plan together to.
Because we talked about having a used one here, fine, and when you get a used one, you got used problems.
Yep.
When you've got problems with that conversion, I don't want to get a used one and have to send that out and then have problems with it because it's, and that's why I'm looking at going the other way with it. And, one's gonna get used more, but after I actually start shopping those out and replace that one there, it's like the cruisers, this cruiser, you rotate the cruiser out more and more time.
Right, which is what.
That's what we do.
Fire does is they've, there's a new one they rotated into their system. They have more than 5 now, right? So they're rotating all through.
and we plan, like I said, our plan is to get 10 years. If we can get 10 years out of a truck, that's especially in our area, what we have for roads and what they put on them. If we can get 10 years out of that truck, feel pretty confident. I mean, that truck's paid for itself, really, over that span. And then with a remount, we're getting 20 years out of the box and only paying half the cost for the truck. So
So every time, obviously, you're saving quite a bit of expense every time you remount because you're not purchasing the box and the gear. So, along with all of this, we've discussed, a little bit about our financing and what are some of the plans, how's it going to work. As you've seen in my memos, this is also about our fire protection for our town. Having these employees, and if we, start small and we get to the point, where we're going to need to be for training, is getting the staffing to help us increase our fire protection in our town. What we have now, and a lot of towns around us are similar. We have a volunteer backup pay call staff. Okay, and that's what runs the department. Now, is that always reliable? No. Is it the best answer? Maybe. But I can tell you that trending over the years for a long time, this isn't something new, that the people choosing to volunteer for this job or other volunteer issues or pay call is down, huge.
statewide.
And we're moving nationwide, yeah. And we're seeing the effects of that. And then a lot of people will say, oh, it's the person. That's why there's no people there. It doesn't make a difference. If you go to Presque Isle, their volunteers are the same amount. They have, 18 people possibly, and they might have 6 to 7 to 8 good people. And you might have, in our department, we have 11 right now. And you might have 4 or 5. And it all, how does it hit, right? To run a fire, you need a good amount of staff. And that's gonna require us to provide staffing to do it, plus utilize our regional resources in doing that. Because there's just no other way. And that's what's for, I don't wanna say force, I don't wanna use that word. That's where we're going. The purpose of this for me, some people will say that I was coming in to do an EMS plan, and it really is a side effect of that can help us with generating some revenue to offset and providing the service that our town
Really.
needs. And then at the same time, increasing our fire protection and in that way, having the staff who do that. Now, I'm not gonna promise you the world, because it's numbers. It's a numbers game. So I have 3 people on staff on a Tuesday, and 2 guys get sent out on a medical call, and now a structure fire comes in and there's 1 guy bringing a truck. But there's where we're gonna have to rely on a call, still building a call force and mutual aid departments. But it's something.
And if it's in your town, it gives people here, younger generation, a new focus, like I could do this in my own town now and I don't have to leave. It's just another focal point of something that you offer in their home community.
The idea is to utilize our resources as we can. For example, an EMS call, 1 ambulance, one set of staff to do that call, and they're on a call, well, another one comes in, what are we gonna do? We're gonna have to rely on our mutual aid towns, Presque Isle, Caribou, to help us out, as they're gonna have to rely on us. If we have an incident that's multifaceted and we have a large number of patients, we can't do it alone, Caribou can't do it alone, nobody can. And so we'll all have to pool our resources to help each other out to get the job done, and whatever that job is. And that's with the fire protection. I do want to make it clear that that's what this has been about for me. How can I make our town's fire protection better? It's not going to be the best. We're going to have growing pains, and we need to get there. But just looking at what I've seen and where the trend has been, this is, in my opinion, the only answer moving forward. And in our town, if we want to progress this town in the future, I don't see how you can attract businesses if you're not going to provide these services for these businesses to be here. If we don't stand up an EMS service or a fire department, maybe we may not be looked at as a town when they want to bring a business into this community. They may stay in Caribou and Presque Isle because 1, numbers, and 2, services. And yes, does that all come at an expense? Sure. A lot of things come at an expense.
Everything
okay?
comes at an expense.
But this plan, and hopefully progressing in the future, gives the opportunity to generate some revenue to offset some of those expenses, where there is very few departments that a municipality runs can say that. No bash on public works and police, but right, they can. Now, that's good and bad. Okay, because then hopefully you don't look at us like a cash cow and all you want is more money, because that's not my focus. It's about how can we provide that service to our citizens better. And of course, that's all up to you with what you're hearing from the taxpayers, what you feel is the best that we can provide for service and afford. But looking where we're at right now, this is what I feel presenting as we start out. And I'm sure there's many questions, obviously, and incidentals, but.
What's your projected mill rate for next year? I'm sure you've looked into it a little bit.
Well, I certainly, with the loss of re-energy, we'd be looking at sudden and severe for next year, not for this year. So, yeah.
I mean, there's other ways, I think, as a community, if we looked at a percentage of taxes that we pay as though the mill rate is today, possibly looking at a percentage added to our community for EMS service. I don't think that if it got right down to it, that would draw a whole lot of attention because it's like, having insurance, it's like having, you gotta pay for service. So I think if it got right down to it, and it was a projected fee that would be added to our taxes a year, I don't think it would shake up a lot of people, not knowing that and we would have that coverage in our community. And what would it affect if you looked at somebody that is middle class, that's paying $2,800 to $3,200 a year taxes? So instead of it being $3,200, it would be $3,300. I would pay it and wouldn't think twice, knowing that I had the service of EMS. So there's, yeah, I mean, that's a look at.
Some of the negative comments that have come in when the change happened with Crown, where that people were willing, of course, in writing, they were willing to pay the extra to guarantee a service in town. So that's.
I mean, what have we paid in the past 10 years for EMS service in Fort Fairfield? Even though we swapped and traded, there was a price to get it there. There was a price. It would surprise you to see how much we have spent in a community in a 10-year or 5-year projection. Now let's look at what we're spending. You see, I think a lot of people would be surprised to see the actual price that was costing our communities.
I don't, so far, I mean, I've heard a lot of negative things since I've been here with the fire department. But this scenario, I have not heard much. What I've heard is that most people want a service. However, you're gonna have pros and cons and the negatives and positives of everything. I think as a council, you're looking at the taxpayers and what is our overall cost. I think, and Adrian and I were talking a while back on looking at the property and values and the assessments and what does that cost on someone who's the highest property, pays the most taxes, and someone that pays the least amount of taxes, and it was incidental really for cost increases. When we look at what's gonna be here to provide. Now, it's
Don't mind me, I'm just.
yeah, it's always that discussion of cost to benefit. You get I don't want, I'm sure you hear it. Any more taxes, I can't afford it. And I'm not gonna sit here and tell you, I know everybody's situation, nor do we all. But what I can say is that you've hired me to be your fire chief and to give you recommendations of where I think the best place for our town is to go. And I think this is part of it. And I think moving forward, that's something that we certainly should look at and move forward with. And again, it'll progress hopefully in the future.
How much did you pay for your Crown contract?
Well, yeah.
42,000.
A little over 42.
And can we say it's cheaper to contract? Yeah, look at the price of salaries, right?
But we also have to remember.
Absolutely.
service
But what are
But
we,
look at the, compare it to the type of service that you're gonna have.
true,
That's why we're here,
Right.
because the service was going away.
right. And so, what are we doing besides that? I mean, are we creating jobs?
Yeah.
Yes, we're creating decent paying wage jobs in our own town for our, for that to happen and hopefully to progress and benefit, our citizens in jobs and services and, a lot of different areas. There's
You've
a lot
got
of-
people that are looking at the map as we speak, looking for a community to move to and raise their family and have, we support a good school and our services in all areas. And then finally they look and they say, oh.
That's what it is per capita percent.
There you go. And that's gonna make,
45,
well,
46.
West Calvert here who does, and that's where they move to.
So reaching out to the people, don't be so foolish as to say you know everything. Reach out to the people that can help you be successful in the future. That's this gentleman here.
So you're looking at If you do your fire department operating budget and you add into that your contract fees you were paying for Crown,
Correct, yeah.
if you take into account of that and then minus, that's your whole number. Then you minus your budget from the fire department and minus your contract from that. And then divide that by your population, that gives you the 145. So
Right.
it'd be $145 a citizen to have a full-time fire and ambulance department in your community.
Give or take, because again, it's
Yeah.
based on their,
Right, and I added low revenue, so it could be less, it could be a little more, but that's basically what you're
In the
looking at.
ballpark. And I
You're,
don't think there's one taxpayer in this town that would stand up and pay that and smile when they laugh.
but that's what it would be per person.
Have that service.
It's, the numbers are big when we put everything together and itemize it out, but when you really look at what's coming down to the taxpayer, it's not as big. And in my opinion, not as a burden. Now, I've always seen it differently. My opinion is that I want those services and I'm willing to pay for them, but that's me. And again, each taxpayer will have their own opinion about that. But I can tell you that, having that service, and it seems to me that Fort Fairfield over the years has been, it's been important to them to have their own buy-in on stuff, their own service, their own this. And that's another part of it too. It's a building our community. And this is part of it. Those numbers, yeah, are they gonna go up? Does everything go up? Yes. Okay, so, you
Yeah,
can't.
but once you're established and you start seeing, what you're getting in return off of it, it's, at least you're getting something back out of it for the total expense to work towards.
rather than be forced into a decision based on a company's decision, we have the opportunity to decide what's best for this community moving forward. We've been given lots of numbers and information, lots of testimony, and I'm sure next week we'll hear even more. So you'll have the opportunity to weigh both options moving forward, whether we have our own service or we continue to contract, and what that contract looks like. Rate of service, response times, all of those things moving forward. The thing that is imperative to remember is that it is a minimal cost moving forward based on spreading out over all of the taxpayers in the community. And that includes industry, farmers, residents. It's not just, we're not just talking about the residents in this community. It befalls everyone who is a taxpayer in the town of Fort Fairfield. And by providing these types of services moving forward, we will be able to better market our community to other industry, to other potential residents, to lots of other situations moving forward, potential farm. So these are all lots of things that we've thrown at you, lots of discussions, lots of numbers. So feel free to call and come in and see me and talk some more to Chief. Anything that you would, feel like you need to discuss prior to next week as well. And a lot more information will be in your council packets this week than normal, coming up for next week. But I want you to be fully prepared so that you don't come to council next week feeling you're uninformed. I would prefer you to be informed, because there are a lot of discussions happening in the community that unfortunately they are not informed. So I think it's imperative that you be informed, so you're able to answer their questions for them as well.
Yeah, and you're looking at something that words and numbers, statistics. But as all we said here tonight, how do you put a price tag on a loved one lost because EMS services couldn't respond in time, that we have to live with the rest of our lives on an incident that, we did the best we could do with what we had, and that's all you can do. But moving forward and giving us a closer touch with all the citizens in our community may make a difference in saving that loved one's life that somebody doesn't have to live with. You can't replace that. You can't replace that. So, it's a good thought.
Chairman, have an email and a reminder that they have the opportunity to ask questions. And then
You're doing it right now. Good job.
the public has the opportunity to come in and speak with me at the town office. If they have questions, comments, concerns prior to council on October 16th at 6 p.m. And the public, the citizens of Fort Fairfield always have the opportunity to speak during public comments period prior to council starting their meetings. So I would encourage everyone who has thoughts, comments, questions to come in and do that rather than speak amongst themselves and share those thoughts with us, their comments and questions, so that we can work through this. This is a really big deal for the town of Fort Fairfield. It's not something to be taken lightly. I know myself and Chief have worked very hard for a very long time. So I think it's imperative that we really.
It was a great presentation. It was well planned and well prepared.
Thank you.
You guys did a great job.
They did all the work.
But we were wrong. Yeah.
We've spent a lot of discussion on it, Chief Susie, too, so thank you, Chief, for allowing us to.
As well as Presque Isle has
Yes,
assisted
Scott
us.
as well.
The council is in full support, as we've told you.
That letter will be in your packet. Unfortunately, Martin Pundit and Gerald were unable to do this. Jim, but they've sent a letter along. So, that will be in your council packet.
Well, thank you folks for coming.